Hello, everybody, and welcome back to DJ Tutorials. This is part two of our coffee cup tutorial series. We're going to be learning how to create the handle, and we're also going to be adding some quick textures so that we can see how the overall shaping is coming together and refining some things in the mesh to make sure it's looking really good before we start to add some real materials to our object. So this is pretty much how mine ended up. Make sure that you go in and refine as you need, add a loop cut if you need to add some shaping or to be able to create this sort of angle change here that I did. Make sure you don't skip this step to make this into a circle shape, and make sure that you put a bottom down here. And what you'll want to do before we continue is hit A to select all, hit M, and then merge by distance, just to make sure you don't have any doubled up vertices. And you might have seen a number down there, and that's good because it will, resolve any issues. And also, what I would recommend is going up here, and I kind of did this quickly, make sure that you have matte cap on, select this one, and select all of your object here with A, go up to mesh, normals, recalculate outside. And you'll see that I had a kind of like a big shift in the look of the color. And that's because what's called the normals were flipped around. And we can maybe get into that later, but just trust me, do that once you've finished creating the entire solid object, and you'll make sure that you don't have any issues in the future. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to be creating this handle here. And if we hit 1 and we turn on our cup reference, let me just save this really quick, you'll see that the handle here is coming off the side. And if we look to the side here, you can see that we kind of have this going on, where when the metal, or this shaping here for these edges, that's kind of right in the middle of one of those. We don't really want that. We want it to come off of one of these sides right here. So you can rotate this image if you want, but we're just going to rotate the cup. So if you hit A, make sure you're in edit mode, hit R, and then Z, and hold Control, and you can kind of rotate this around if you want to do this sort of free form to make sure that that side is going to be right in the middle of the X axis. I'm going to right click there to undo it and hit 7 so I can really make sure that I'm rotating this right. Hit R, Z, and I'm just going to rotate this around, and let's go right about there and left click to set that. And basically now we have it being uh, the edge here is being bisected by the x axis. It's a very important step that you do. So now we want to go to the front view here, and we need to make sure that the handle is going to actually be able to be extruded here into the proper size. So if we look at our loops, we can see that there's a loop cut here and a loop cut up here. And it's not quite going to work for this handle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Z wireframe. I'm going to left click and drag to box select all of this area up here, and I'm just going to move this up G, Z on the Z axis so it's right about there. And what I'm looking for is that this line is above this part here where the arm actually starts. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure, and you can kind of like change the shaping here at this point too. I probably should have done this. I'm going to grab all this, so left click to select all this, grab it, scale it out a bit, and you can hit Shift Z to make sure it doesn't go on the Z axis, and just pull that out to about there. Grab this section here. We actually don't need to scale that, but grab this section here, maybe scale it out just a little bit more like that. This is all a work in progress, so you can kind of adjust and change as you need. So what we need to look at here is we need to look at where our loop cuts are in relation to where the arm, the handle arms sort of come out, if I can kind of call it that. And you need to make sure that you have a loop cut at the top and the bottom. So that's very simple. All we have to do is hit Control R, and we can make that loop cut right here. And if you feel like that's making too much of a bowed sort of thing here, you can hit G twice, move this around, scale it in, do whatever it is you think you need to do with that to make sure that the shaping is right. You could even, if you hit X here, you can dissolve the edge to get rid of it altogether, and then just use this to scale it if you wish. But I'm going to undo because I think we need that in order to get the shaping where we need it. Now the next thing that we need to look at is where the handle sort of connects at the bottom here. If I go back into solid mode, grab this edge loop here, hit G twice, I can just kind of move that up a bit right about there. And then this one here, if I'm looking really closely, you can turn it on wireframe, hit G twice, move it, and scale it in if you need to. So that's basically what we need to do first before we start to extrude out and create this arm. So make sure that you add a loop cut if needed for this area here for the part that comes out, and then a loop cut down here to create a section for it to come out down here. After you've done that, let's rotate around to the side here and just kind of take a look at what we're dealing with. Where the arm needs to come out is here and down here. And before we begin to do any extrusions to create this arm, we need to cut this so that it doesn't interfere with where the metal is going to be on the edges here and here. So we need to add a loop cut or two right here to create that. So I'm going to hit Control R and then roll up on the middle mouse wheel and left click to select or set it, and then right click so it's right in the center. And that will basically create our starting point for this arm. So now, and just so you know, it did create on the other side of this object, it did create this here, which we can delete later, but for right now, we're just going to leave it because it really doesn't do anything at the moment. Now, before we actually start to create this arm here, we need to separate our top section right here. We're going to need to add another loop cut in between here, between this one and this one. So hit Control R, add a loop cut here, sort of pull it down a little bit, and that's going to give us the control we need. And then if we go to the side here, go to Face Select, grab where the arm, and if you select the cup reference, if you want to see this a little bit closer, we'll select that. Actually go to Object Mode, select our cup reference, go to the object data here, turn up the opacity, and we can kind of see what that looks like. Go back into our cup object, hit Edit, and you see this right here? You want to delete that face. And then right here where it's supposed to connect, right down in here, let's hit X to delete that face as well. And yours should look something like this where there's a hole here. So now what we're going to do here is we're just going to start creating this arm. So hit Edge Select, hold Alt, left click to select this here, go to the front view, and we're going to hit E, and you can see that now we are creating sort of like an arm shape here. You want to make sure that you're moving it just on the x-axis. You don't want to move it on the y, so that's why we went to the front view. And you can right click to place it, or sorry, you can right click to set it where it was and then hit G to grab it again. Left click to place it, scale it. I'm going to go into wireframe mode here so we can kind of see more what we're doing. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically start creating this shape here. Now you want to be careful with scale, and I'll show you why. If we look here, you can see what we're creating is kind of like an oblong shape. We're not really creating a circle for this handle, and it probably would be more of a circle shape if we followed the sort of like tube shape of this handle. But really, you can make it whatever shape you want. Just make sure it's consistent. And if you scale it on the y-axis here, you can actually change it to more of a circle, or you can make it more sort of like oblong shape, which I would not recommend. So we want it to be a little bit more of a circle, I think, maybe like this. And then when you hit E, you can lock it on the X by hitting X right after and move it out and sort of set the shape there. Or go to front view, which is my preference, and then you can start hitting G and just moving it from here. Now you'll notice that there are angle changes in this, and there are two ways you can handle this. You can hit R from this angle to rotate it, which sometimes has undesirable results, or you can choose this tool over here that's called shear, and then these little handles will allow you to basically keep the same scaling or the same shape and just change the angle that's being created here. So my recommendation is sort of to use a mixture of the two techniques and make sure you're using the right handle. for the shear here, and let's go back here so that we can actually grab and rotate this. And first start with a basic shape. So we know that there's a very major angle change right up here. I'm going to go to shear. I'm going to move this a little bit. And then I'm going to hit E to kind of bring this down a little bit here. And let's see if I can create a shape here that's a little bit too crazy. You can see what shear does. Okay. And we're going to scale this down and scale it up on the Y a little bit to keep and maintain this shape. And basically, what you're going to be doing from here is changing the shear angle if it helps, or rotating it on in the front view like this, and just extruding and rotating and shearing depending on what you think it really needs to look like. And you'll have to keep going between the two to really make sure that that shaping is getting where you need it. But the main thing here is that you need to make sure that you're maintaining kind of a consistent shape, or not kind of, but more so a consistent shape, and that you are doing it in broad strokes. So here I'm going to rotate a little bit, maybe shear it a little bit here. E to extrude, rotate a little bit here. E to extrude and rotate a little bit more here. And of course you can shear it if you'd like. Scale it. It looks like I need to scale it on Z this time, based on the shape of the bottom, connection here. I'm going to hit 1 again to go to the front view. And once you get to this point here, I would recommend that you do this. So let's go back to the box select, hold Alt, left click to select this loop here, left click, Alt, Shift, left click to select this one here, hit F3, and you're going to type in bridge. Spell it right, bridge. And then you'll select the one that says bridge edge loops. Then it connects just like that. And from there, it's pretty much the same thing as we did before. You can add a loop cut, Control R, right click to set it right in the center, and you can rotate, you can grab it and move it. You can hit G twice to sort of tighten up a section. And I'm just going to do it like this here and go to wireframe so I can see a little bit better. And I'm going to pull this up here with G. And you can select this up here if you want to toggle the X-ray view. You can scale it. And we're basically just refining that shape to make sure that it's exactly what we want it to be. I'm going to shift this along here and move it around. And I'm just going between the solid mode and the wireframe mode to make sure that the shaping is pretty much exactly what I want it to be. Oops, hit H there to hide. Grab it here. And I'm just grabbing these loop cuts here. And this is why you don't want to start with too many loop cuts to begin with. You just want to get the main shape first, just like that. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to tighten this up where it connects to the actual cup. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to just add a loop cut here. So Control R, left click, and you want to slide that a little bit closer to where it connects, right? Like that. And then at the bottom here, Control R, and we're going to add it right here and slide it right over like that. And you can hold Shift to make it a little bit more refined. And there you go. And we might need to adjust this as we do the next step, but you can kind of create that shape that way and refine it a little bit, tighten it up, and get it to where it looks like it's coming out like that. We can turn this reference off real quick and take a look at what we did. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to want to do here is we kind of want to see what our materials are going to look like first to make sure that our geometry is right. We did the first step here by looking at the matte cap here, and you can, change it to something else to see what a different sort of shading might look like. But what we need to do here is we need to look at how these metal sections here are going to look before we say we're done with the overall geometry. So let's go to a material preview. I'm going to save the file here. And we're just going to create some placeholder materials just to get us going. Now, one thing that you're going to see here is that we have created a little bit of if we're looking right there, you can see that we've created a little bit of an issue here. That's okay. We're going to fix that right now. So go to edges or edge select. We're going to select all of these edges, holding shift, and even the one that's cutting across the middle here. Go on to the side, and we're just going to select all of these edges just like this. Oops, we don't want those ones. Hit X, dissolve edges. Okay. Now you're going to see this little funkiness going on right here. Just grab this. X, dissolve edges. And there we go. So that'll pretty much resolve that issue there. If you wanted to, you could try and do something else here, but we're just going to leave that as it is because this should work just fine. Now after you've gone ahead and deleted got rid of those edges there, you can see if we take another look at after we've created the handle here, there's this sort of like strange creased look down in here. And I'm going to change the matte cap to this one here so you can see a little bit clearer. Now, we could just leave that as it is, but if it bothers you, I'm going to show you how you can change it. And one of the things I want to make sure that I sort of drive home with my tutorial series is that it's not just about doing exactly the thing that I'm making, and creating a perfect world, perfect case scenario of doing a particular thing. I want to show you how you can resolve some of these issues as they come up. So, just keep that in mind and don't get frustrated with me as we're, resolving and fixing some of the meshes here. So if we go into edit mode and we take a look at what happened, when we added our loop cuts here to change this sort of shaping here to be a little bit more accurate with how we were creating this, it created these extra lines here, or these extra edges, that sort of sharpen the creasing right in here. And there are multiple ways you can handle this. There may be a right way and a wrong way, but I'm going to show you an easy way to deal with this. So if you select these vertice points, so here, 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 and here, and you hit G twice, and just slide it over a bit, and do the same thing on the other side. Grab these, holding shift, and hit G twice, and slide it over a bit. You're going to sort of soften what you're seeing there. And then you could even grab these if you want, hit G twice, and you'll soften that as well. And that's going to basically resolve that sort of issue that you saw there. It's really not that big of a deal, but it's something that you should pay attention to. So after we've resolved that issue with the extra edges that we've added there, what we're going to do is we're going to add some materials on here just to see how things are starting to look before we start really adding some materials. We want to make sure that the geometry and how everything is coming together is really going to work for us. So let's hit Control S to save, go into edit mode, and let's take a look here at our shading. Now I'm going to be zooming through some of this stuff because this is not, you know, a advanced thing. I'm going to get rid of these here, and I'm going to turn on our reference in the background. Actually, we don't need the reference in the background. Let's actually bring this back. And we're going to open up the shader editor here. And we're not doing anything really crazy, so don't worry about that right now. But we do want to see how the areas that we're going to be shading, what that kind of looks like. And since this particular object, we're actually going to open up this one here. Since this object has the metal on the rim and the sides and the bottom and the handle, and there is this section here that we're going to go over in just a moment, what we need to do is we need to just make sure that that's going to start to work in our favor. So we need to go to the face select here, and you need to start to select those areas. So if we look at this edge here, we need that one. So hold Alt left click those faces, and then you can hold Shift or Alt Shift left click and start to grab all of those other edges, and then deselect the stuff you don't want. Okay, so we're going to do that. Just grab all these, holding Shift and left click, and make sure that we get all the stuff we want. And we're also going to grab this very bottom loop here. And then we want to hit Control or hold Control down and deselect what we don't want. So make sure that you deselect, or hold Shift actually, not Control. Control if you're doing the box select, but Shift and deselect the loops. So like this loop here, we don't want. I'm going to go into, yeah, we're in solid mode, but let me change this to a easy to see. So holding Shift, Alt, and left clicking the stuff we don't want. And down in here, we basically don't want any of this here. We don't want that edge there, and we don't want these down in here. Okay? So make sure you just have the areas that you want. The metal on, actually, let's do these as well. So I'm holding Shift, left clicking all of these loops here. That should be fine. So just like that. And we're going to hit New. We're going to call this one Metal. And then we're going to hit New again. Okay? Because basically the material that we have here is going to assign it to everything since we only have one material. We're going to hit this plus sign here. We're going to hit New, and we're going to call this Ceramic. And then we're going to, over here in this window, hit Control I, which will invert our selection. And you're going to click this right here that says Assign. Then go back to the metal. Go in here in the node editor. You're going to change this here to metallic up to 1, and then roughness down to 0. Then if we go into object mode here by hitting tab or going up here and switching it and go to material preview, this is what it looks like. Okay? So we can start to make a couple adjustments to make sure that when we start adding our materials here, and you're going to ignore this part here, the pattern stuff and the blue sort of speckled pattern here. What we want to do is we want to start adjusting some of these edges to match closer to what this looks like. And you can see here that the way that our subdivision surface modifier has created these edges here, it's kind of large. It's not really what we want to see. And if we go into our modifiers here and we turn off this one here that says on cage, you can see that's how small we originally made it. Okay? Let's turn this back on that says on cage, and I'm going to show you how we can resolve this. Now, other people may show you the following, where you hit Control R, you add loop cuts, and you shift these around in order to control it. I'm going to right click and undo there. That will add a little bit of unnecessary geometry, and we're going to use a different technique to sort of like control these edges a little bit closer to how we want to see it here. So what you want to do is make sure you have edge select here, left click select the edges, not that one there, the edges that we want to sharpen up a bit. And I'm just going to do this one at first to show you how it works, and then you're going to need to do the rest. So if you grab these and then you go up here to item, make sure that this area here is open and go to mean crease. And if you left click select and drag it to the right, you can see it's now controlling how that edge is working. And if we go to the material preview, so holding Z and going to material preview, now it has made a more sharp edge to how that edge is being defined by that bevel we added earlier. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab all of these sections. Let's go into solid mode here. We're going to grab all of these edges. We're going to go ahead and crank up this creasing. And you can grab them all at once if you want and do it. It's up to you. and you can do this selection however you wish. This is just the more precise way that I do it. And once you've created a crease all along those points there, if you go into Material Preview, you'll see that now we have something more like what we see here. Okay. Now, if you're seeing something like this little funkiness going on right here, you can kind of do the same thing. If we go into Point Select, you can grab that point, hit G twice, and you can drag that along the axes here, and you can grab these as well and manipulate these edges here to be a little bit more accurate to what we're really seeing. But I think this is pretty much fine the way it is. Um, we really don't need to adjust any of this, I don't think. Like I said, you could grab all of this whole loop here, hit G twice, move it over, and sort of adjust it if you wish from there. But I think this is going to work out just fine for our final. We're going to be looking at it somewhere around here, and that sort of accuracy is not really worth my time or your time, I don't think. It will end up looking just fine with that area there. Now with the bottom, you can go into solid mode here. You can left click to select this, hit G twice and pull this down closer. You can also try the mean crease to the bottom there, and that will basically tighten that up and do a mixture between grabbing it and sliding it along the loop there, or adding or removing this mean crease to get it to the sort of tightness that you think it should be. We can do the same thing up here at the top because there should be a little bit more of this metal showing. We can actually scale this in a little bit, I think. So maybe about there. And that's going to basically cover it as far as that's concerned. And then you can sort of adjust this here for how much there should be. And you can move it on Z if you think it should come up a little bit, or add or shift the loop here to tighten that up. And of course, you can also add a bevel here. So if I loop select this whole thing, hit Control B, and then slide it here with Shift, and you can control it just like that. Okay, I'm going to right click because I don't think we need that for this one. And then on the inside here, when we want to create this ring right in there, hit Control R, roll up on your middle mouse wheel, then right click to set it kind of in the middle, hit Face Select to grab all of this here, or you can just hit Alt and left click select this whole section here, go to your materials, go to metal and assign it. And then again, you can go to edge select, grab that edge, hit G twice, move it around. Same thing with the bottom, you can move this, and then you can also add the mean crease and adjust it just like that. If you feel this whole thing should come up, you can grab one, grab the other, and move it up just like that. For the handle, same thing here. I know I keep saying the same thing because that's really what it is. You can add some loop cuts to tighten things up, or left click select, add a mean crease if you think it needs it, and that will help you to control when you start adding your materials, how the material is going to be added to the object. So, right here, I think that this set of faces right here need this metal, so I'm going to assign that. But you can see it's kind of bleeding out quite a bit. So I'm going to add a loop cut, Control R, right here. And maybe something like that. And then I'm actually going to change this one again. This here, I'm going to change that to ceramic. And there, that seems like it's more sort of attached. If you want to see more fine-tuned on how the subdivision surface modifier is going to work, increase the viewport, and there you have a more refined sort of subdivision to see how that's going to end up. So hopefully you've been able to follow along and get to this point. This is the point where I'm going to say we're going to leave it and move on to adding materials on the next one and figuring out how to do these sort of uh, stencils to create different effects and then adding this material here. So if you'd like, you can go ahead and try to create this saucer, but I would recommend waiting until the end of everything to sort of create that. And I will see you guys on the next tutorial. Please make sure to like and subscribe this video, and let me know in the comments if you run into any roadblocks or any problems, and I will see you guys next time.